and you were driving, you see this thing happen. What did it look like to you?
I saw only about 2 seconds of it, but I believe that what I saw was the collision. So I was headed south, going straight. The airport was off to my left. I was looking at the line of planes coming in because that highway lines up almost exactly with the line of planes coming in to land. It's just off to the right a little bit. So I was driving home, and I always watched that line of planes coming in. I saw how evenly spaced apart they were, and I thought there might be one right off to my left, right about to land. It looked like the spacing was right, so I looked off, and initially I saw the plane, and it looked fine, normal. It was right about to head over land, maybe 120 feet above the water. It looked like a fairly, a small end but normal size passenger jet, and it looked normal. It was level. So I looked back at the road, and then I looked back again just to see if I could maybe see it land. And this was 3 seconds later, and at that point it was banked all the way to the right. I would say maybe past the right, past 90 degrees. I could see the underside of it. It was lit up a very bright yellow, and there was a stream of sparks underneath it. It looked like a Roman candle, if you've ever held one of those on the 4th of July, but it was much, much bigger than that. It was high off the ground. I didn't see anything beyond that. I didn't see any helicopter. It's a very, very dark night out tonight, so anything that's not illuminated, you can't really see. So I didn't see the other aircraft, but I saw the plane banking at an angle that a plane shouldn't bank, and I saw sparks flying.
Wow. That drive that so many Washingtonians do, I've driven that many times myself. And those planes, as you said, it's extremely normal to see tons and tons of aircraft landing all the time. So you see this happening, you see the sparks flying. What happened next? What did you do next?
So I was turning my head to the left and I was driving, right? So I looked at this it couldn't have been more than 2 seconds, and then I needed to look back at the road. And then I looked back again. I wondered if I was going to see an explosion, a crash into the ground. I was trying to decide if I should call 911. This was all happening very, very quickly. So I wasn't thinking entirely rationally. But I turned back and I didn't see anything. I didn't see a plane hit the ground. I didn't see flames or an explosion or smoke. I didn't see emergency lights. It was so brief what I saw that I actually wondered for a moment if I had hallucinated it in some way. I kept driving, and just a few seconds later, I was too far along to be able to turn my head back and see the airport anymore. So I looped back around. I U-turned on the highway to go back and see if I could see anything. And when I turned back north and drove by the same point, I still didn't see anything. No flames, no crash, no nothing.
All right, Ari Schulman, thank you very much for joining us. And honestly, I'm so sorry that you actually witnessed this happen. I want to go now to Pete Muntean. Pete, you've got some breaking news for us.
We just have this in from American Airlines. Spokesperson Sarah Jantz tells me on board this flight, American Airlines flight 5342, there were 60 passengers on board and 4 crew. This was not a small airplane. This was a regional jet, a flight flying from Wichita, Kansas, into Reagan National Airport, just outside of D.C. on the Virginia side. There were many people on board, very likely that this was a full flight. A CRJ 700 like this can seat between 60 and 70 people, depending on the configuration, depending on what the airline orders. Right now, there is a very frantic search in the Potomac River right now, and Noah Gray of DC Fire tells me they have every resource out there that they possibly can, every resource working as hard as they can to do what they can. There are several helicopters in the air right now, not only from Prince George's County, but also from Metropolitan Police Department in the District of Columbia. And you can see all of the boats and all of the response there on the very dark Potomac River right now, water temperature about 42 degrees. Hypothermia sets in only minutes. It is very clear now that this happened as a mid-air collision involving a Black Hawk helicopter from the United States Army and this regional jet operated by PSA Airlines on behalf of American Airlines. That flight was coming in from the south, initially lined up for Reagan National Airport runway 1, that's to the north, and then swung out to the east, apparently lining up with runway 33 there at Reagan National Airport, the slightly shorter runway used by slightly smaller planes. But make no mistake, this was a small airplane, and the new reporting we have from American Airlines, 60 people on board this plane and 4 crew. This is an area, a slice of airspace that is heavily congested, not only with planes taking off and landing from Reagan National Airport, climbing and descending all of the time, but also heavily congested with helicopters from the United States government, the military, and local police departments. There are helicopter routes that crisscross through the airspace that essentially coexist with the airliners that are coming into land. This looks to me like a shot from WJLA of the GW Parkway. That looks like it is just on the Virginia side of the Potomac River, not far from Reagan National Airport. And crews have been essentially watching this drama play out by the minute.
Yeah.
Of course, they are hoping that people will be able to be plucked from the Potomac. But we know that there were many people on board this flight, which was very, very nearly full.
And Pete, as we just heard from an eyewitness who saw the collision happen in just seconds, he said he didn't see any evidence. You've been saying you've been looking at this picture, you don't see a plane. He didn't see any smoke. He didn't see a plane in the water. It was so dark, he couldn't see anything, but there was also not a lot of signs of what happened to the plane after that collision occurred. And so this is going to be the kind of thing that the search and rescue teams are desperately trying to determine exactly where this plane is, exactly where the people on the plane are, and how to get them out of this water. Pete, stand by for us as you continue to do your excellent reporting on this story. Mary Schiavo is with us. She's a CNN transportation analyst. Mary, so much to ask you about this, but one of the things about the D.C. area is just how incredibly tightly controlled this airspace is. You know, the post 9/11 world for D.C. Is such that really very few aircrafts can be in the air that are not explicitly, no aircrafts can be in the air that are not explicitly authorized. It's incredibly tightly controlled, but it's also incredibly congested. So when you have a military aircraft like this in the same area as commercial flights, what are some of the problems that can arise from that?
Well, yeah, and you have said it very correctly. Now, the D.C. Reagan National Airport, you must be under air traffic control. It is all instrument controlled. Planes can't traverse on what they call visual aircraft rules. But also everyone knows that. I mean, everyone knows the routes of the D.C. airport, the runways, and that it is entirely controlled by air traffic control. So to traverse that airspace legally and correctly, obviously they would have to have clearance. They would have to they should be under control. Now, there are certain areas, certain flight levels, altitudes, if you will, that are reserved for helicopters, that are reserved for other operations. But off the ends of those runways, it is total control, and everyone who operates in the D.C. area knows it very well. And I literally just landed at DCA at about 7:30 on a PSA flight operated by PSA for American Airlines. It was busy tonight, but the planes weren't full. The plane I was on wasn't full, but there was lots of traffic. The flight was actually a little bit late because of the traffic. But again, everyone knows that about the DC airspace. And so this was one of the concerns literally decades ago when Dulles Airport was opened. Back then, the agreement was to fund and pay for and open Dulles, is that Washington National was supposed to close when Dulles opened. And of course, the hue and cry, for obvious reasons, it's a very popular airport. It's very convenient. And, everyone in the government loves to use it. It did not close. And I'm sure that's part of the discussion. The most important discussion, of course, is searching for the passengers and the investigation of what happened. But this will renew the issue of, is this airspace reasonable and correct? And does DCA still make sense? I don't see anyone realistically closing it, but there was certainly maybe calls to limit the flights, to limit the numbers of aircraft that can operate there. But really, we don't know enough yet to know, was the helicopter properly controlled? Was it on the flight path? Was the airline, for any reason, not on its flight path? Now, when I landed at about 7:30 there, it was windy. There was a bit of chop in the air, but it wasn't really anything that would cause difficulty in operations. But this will renew the debate again about, what about Reagan National? Is it too close, too congested, too many aircraft, too many operations? And how much, how many aircraft can we put in this very small space? But again, DCA is very, very popular for obvious reasons. It's convenient.